So you guys enjoyed the last parts list that I made for the $1,000 PC, including an RTX 3070. I asked you guys what you wanted to see next, and not to my surprise, a lot of you guys were requesting a roughly $1,500 to $2,000 PC with the RTX 3080. So that's what we're doing today. We're gonna shoot for $1,700, kind of right in between those two ends of the spectrum there. Now some of you guys are probably thinking, well Kyle, why don't you just take that $1,000 PC and swap out the RTX 3070 for the 3080? That way you only have to add $200. That's a $1,200 build and way cheaper than the $1,700 system you're trying to part out today. And while that's very true, I kind of subscribe to the notion that you should always try to scale all parts of your system at the same time. I mean, if we were to just keep upgrading one component, like doubling down on the GPU while leaving everything else the same, that's kind of like maxing out one stat on your RPG character. Sure, they're gonna get stronger in that one area, but at a certain point, they're gonna become imbalanced and impractical. So we wanna try to avoid that with this system, which is why today we're gonna part out a PC that's well-rounded and suited for the RTX 3080. So here we are once again in PC Part Picker, shout out to them for being awesome, and we're gonna start with the CPU just like we did last time. Now, there's a couple different routes we can go. Like the RTX 3070 build, I'm gonna stick with B550 because right now it's the cheapest platform that you can still get full PCIe Gen 4 support on, and you get a lot of the same features that come along with X570 for a lot cheaper on average. And keeping with current gen hardware, I'm gonna pick a Zen 2 based Ryzen 3000 series chip. There's actually two options. There's two paths we can take here. I mean, there's many paths, but the two paths that I see working well for this build. The first one is the Ryzen 7 3700X for $290. This is an 8-core, 16-thread chip, really good gaming CPU, but also tremendously good at multi-threaded performance. So if you were to branch out beyond gaming and dabble with content creation, video editing, live streaming, live encoding, that sort of thing, then this is a really good, compelling option because it does have that multi-threaded performance as well as good single-threaded performance when you're in games. That being said, there's a lot of users who don't care about live streaming or content creation and just want a game. And in that case, that brings us to option number 2, which is the 3600 XT. This is one of the Matisse refresh chips. It's a Ryzen 5 chip. It only has 6 cores and 12 threads, so it is gonna take a pretty significant hit when it comes to multi-threaded tasks compared to the Ryzen 7 part. However, it ships with higher clock speeds out of the box and can be overclocked to higher clock speeds than the 3700X. 3700X tops out at around 4.2 gigahertz. Of course, your mileage may vary, as always, but we've seen people easily overclock the 3600 XT to 4.5, even 4.6 gigahertz, and sometimes even beyond that if they're lucky. While the higher clock speeds of the 3600 XT should net you some extra frames, the amount of benefit you'll see there is going to be reduced as you scale up in resolution, as the game becomes more GPU bound and takes less pressure, or takes more pressure off of the CPU. So if you're gonna be gaming at 1440p or higher, in my opinion, you should still just stick with the Ryzen 7 3700X. The benefit of going with the 3600 XT for those higher clock speeds isn't gonna be worth losing 2 cores and 4 threads, even if you don't plan to do any content creation or streaming, because in the last couple of years, games have started to leverage more cores, and that trend is most likely going to continue in the future. On the flip side though, the strongest case you could probably make for the 3600 XT is if you fall into that category of gamer who's just trying to target the highest frame rates possible and you're gaming at 1080p or even lower. So if your ears perked up when Nvidia announced those new G-Sync monitors that are 360 Hertz IPS displays, most likely at 1080p, that makes the 3600 XT more compelling, as those higher clock speeds will allow you to hit higher frame rates and leverage that higher refresh rate of the display. By and large though, I think the majority of gamers are gonna find more value in the 8-core 3700X. So just for the sake of carrying on with this video, we're gonna select that. 3700X has been added, and we have roughly $1,400 left in our budget. Actually, why don't we just go ahead and add the $700 RTX 3080 right now. $699. All right, so now we have less than $1,000 to spend on every other component. No big deal, we got this. Now we're at another fork in the road. We could use the Wraith Prism cooler that comes included with the 3700X, or we could add an aftermarket cooler. The main benefit of going with a third-party cooler is if you planned to overclock the chip and want it to stay cool and your system to remain quiet, there's also the side benefit of aesthetics, because a lot of these coolers look pretty nice. So let's just say, for the sake of argument, that we're gonna go balls to the wall. We're gonna try to manually tweak and overclock our CPU, which means that we're gonna have to spend some money on an aftermarket cooler. The next decision here is air or liquid, and you can't really go wrong either way. There's pros and cons to both. It really just depends on your preference. As long as you're getting a good, highly rated, well-reviewed product that's reliable, you should be in the clear. For today, I'm gonna go with a liquid cooler. I personally like the way AIOs look in a build. I think I already have in mind what case I wanna use, and that has a lot of liquid cooling support, so I wanna take advantage of that. And if we are talking about the Founders Edition RTX 3080, if you remember what the cooling design is like and how that operates, it literally pushes hot air straight up out of the graphics card in that front fan. So if you did have an air cooler, like a heatsink tower style CPU cooler, right above that GPU, technically that could impact your CPU thermals negatively. We don't really know, it's hard to say until we actually get it on the test bed, but to play it safe, I'm gonna go with an AIO. The plan would be to mount the radiator at the front of the case as opposed to the top, where we could just encounter the same problem if we were to have a heatsink tower style cooler. So I'm gonna look for liquid coolers. I don't think we need to go for a 360 millimeter radiator or even a 280, because the Ryzen 7 3700X is still a 65 watt TDP chip. And while it does get quite a bit warmer than, say, the Ryzen 5 3600, doesn't necessarily need a 360 rad for decent overclocking. So we're gonna sort by lowest price here. We've selected 240 millimeter units only, and these are really budget. I'm gonna stay away from Cooler Master AIOs just because I despise the mounting system. If you've ever tried to mount a Cooler Master liquid AIO, you know what I'm talking about. If only they hadn't lost a certain legal battle with a certain other company that I won't get into right now. The Corsair H100X, this is actually a really good value. I mean, aesthetically, it looks like a lot of their other Corsair's premium coolers, but it's only $70 for a 240 millimeter radiator. And from the reviews that I remember reading a while back, the performance is there. Like, it has really good competitive performance, especially at this price point. I believe the one Achilles heel of this unit were the fans. The fans are a bit noisy. In fact, I read at least one review saying that they were significantly louder in the system than any of the other coolers they tested. So I guess it's a matter of how much noise you're comfortable with and how much you really want to spend on a cooler. If we go up a little bit further, let's just take a look here. There's the Enermax ones. I've had some bad luck with Enermax AIOs, like pumps failing and stuff. So I'm gonna avoid Enermax today, not to say that their products are bound to fail or anything. I've just had bad luck. And we've also got some deep cool options. Okay, for under $100, there's the Capitan 240X in white. I don't know if I want white though. Oh, okay, this is actually a pretty good one too. The Silverstone one, I've seen this one and I just don't like the RGB on it. I'm gonna try to keep it more or less subdued for this build. The Arctic Liquid Freezer 240. This is a good choice. Under $100, very competitively priced, and it's pretty much on par, I think, in performance with the H100X and a lot of other coolers in this class, but the fans are definitely a lot quieter than the SP fans on the H100X. So this might be the move here if you don't want to spend much more than this. The only thing is that the aesthetics aren't for everyone. I'll admit, I'm not a fan. And we'll take a closer look at what the water, I think it's just the water block and the tubes. It looks very kind of futuristic, but in sort of a cheesy, kind of cheap way. I don't know, you guys let me know what you think, but that would be my only complaint. My only gripe with this option is it might not look the most aesthetically pleasing for my tastes. So if we were to scale up, let's see what else here. I don't want to spend more than 115 or so. CryoRig, EVGA. So I mean, a lot of these options are pretty solid. EVGA's CLC 240. This is actually pretty good. There's also the Corsair H100i V2. I'm surprised that this cooler is still available, because this is like a couple generations ago, but I still think this is one of Corsair's best looking AIOs that they've ever made. I like it a lot more than their current lineup. You know, if I wasn't such a vain bastard, I'd probably go with the Arctic Liquid Freezer too, but because I am, I'm gonna choose the H100i V2. There is the Corsair iCUE H100i RGB Pro XT, which is the newer cooler. Like I said, I don't really like the way it looks quite as much, but these are newer. I believe these are quieter, better fans. So that's actually, I might have to do that. I might have to do that, even though like I don't care about the RGB and stuff. It's only $5 more. $5 more for better fans. I mean, that's pretty compelling. So I'm gonna do that. We're locking it in. H100i RGB Pro XT. Moving on to the motherboard. So for our last parts list for the $1,000 RTX 3070 PC, we chose a pretty budget board. I think it was like a Gigabyte DS3H B550, and it was like under $100. It was like 90 something bucks. For this build, I wanna go a little bit more premium. I want at least a good solid mid-range board, and for B550, that means you're looking at around $180 to $215, $220. So let's just go ahead and see what the options are here. I'm gonna go ATX, AM4 and B550. All All right, so this is the range here, starting from the ASRock B550 Steel Legend, which I've heard is a pretty good board. And then I would probably cut it off around here, the ASRock B550 PG Velocitus. So between these boards, we've got some options here. The one that I already have my eye on is the Asus ROG Strix B550F Gaming. I read in an AnandTech article, it was a review on this board, and they gave it really high praise. They gave it a recommended, I don't know if it was an award, but they definitely recommended it. Said that the VRM thermals were really good, actually better than some X570 boards that cost way more. It had really good V-droop control, I believe, as well. And it was like one of the fastest booting boards that they tested on B550. So that's kind of a nice perk. We do have, like I said, the Steel Legend is also a good choice if you don't mind the sort of lighter white or silver color scheme. There is a bit of pink. There's like a splash of pink on this board. I actually have this board in the system that we're currently using in the office, and it's not too noticeable. Once you have the GPU in, which is going to be covering up whatever this is on the heatsink, you just have this little sliver of pink there. It's not too obtrusive, and it's pretty easy to mask off and paint over if you really wanted to. It's a nice, attractive board. PCIe Gen 4, of course. It's got two M.2 slots. Bear in mind though that only the top slot is going to be wired for PCIe Gen 4, because that's sort of the one perk that X570 has over B550. X570 has PCIe Gen 4 lanes coming from the chipset, where on B550, the only PCIe Gen 4 lanes you have are all coming from the CPU. There's 20 in total, so 16 are going to your full-size GPU, and then the other 4 are going to this top slot. So that means this bottom one is wired for PCIe Gen 3, because that's coming off the I/O lanes of the chipset. For most people, for most users, one PCIe Gen 4 slot is enough. Like I said, VRM thermals are really solid, and power delivery on this board is supposed to be really good as well. We even have an additional 4-pin connector for our CPU, so an 8 plus 4-pin. This board should handle 12 and 16 core Ryzen processors, no problem, for when you are ready to upgrade your CPU. So I think I'm just gonna go with this one because I know it's a good board. It would take me a long time to sort of read through reviews for all these other boards. I'm locking it in. Oh wait, we have two options. One with Wi-Fi and one without. Looks like the one with Wi-Fi is $15 more. You know what, I'm gonna say the type of person using this build for gaming is gonna be hardwired. Ethernet all the way, 2.5 gigabit LAN on the back of these boards. A lot of these B550 boards have that now. So I'm just gonna go say 15 bucks. Go with screw you Wi-Fi. All right, so there we are. We're already at $1,300. We have $400 left. Okay, choose memory. I want a 16 gigabyte kit, depending on your needs. Let's say you're heavy into content creation, you're doing a lot of rendering, then you might want to scale up to 32. I think the average user is going to be comfortable with 16. We're going to do 2 by 8 gig sticks. Speed for memory frequency, I would say 3200 is like the minimum I would go. I think for this build, since we're spending a bit more, our budget's a bit higher, we can try 3600. That might be the sweet spot. I'm gonna try to avoid the OLOE sticks that are always just at the very bottom of the list in terms of being dirt cheap, but I don't have enough experience with them to say how well they perform. Ripjaws 5 from G.Skill has been a go-to choice for me for years. They've been super reliable, and for DDR4 3600, cast latency 18, 60 bucks ain't bad. So are these black or gray? It looks like they're black. Then there's Guile, Team Force, Mushkin, Corsair. So Corsair is a little bit more expensive. Pretty much the same specs. Ooh, that's cast latency 20. Ugh, no. Yeah, I'm just gonna go with Ripjaws 5. Why not? It'll match the build nicely too. For storage, let's do storage. So let's talk about storage. I wanna really populate that PCIe Gen 4 slot with a PCIe Gen 4 drive. That makes it kind of easy because there aren't a whole lot of PCIe Gen 4 NVMe SSDs on the market still. As far as capacity goes, for a C drive, we're gonna do at least like 500-ish. 500-ish gigs. How do I select PCIe Gen 4? Oh, we do have NVMe here, yes. I think for a PCIe Gen 4 drive, you're looking at around 100 bucks for a 500 gig option. Like MP600, this is Gen 4. Sabrent Rocket, this is 4. This is actually slightly faster, but it's a little bit more expensive too. Probably not worth the extra 15 bucks there. I think FireCuda, Seagate FireCuda is also Gen 4. Nope, it's Gen 3. I'm just gonna roll with the MP600. I do already have 4 2TB MP600s inside of Prometheus right now, so I might be a little biased, but it's a really good drive. Now we need a second drive for mass storage. We could go with another SSD, get like a 1 or 2TB SSD. That's really gonna drive our price up though. And with the amount of remaining budget we have, I just don't think we can afford it. So I'm gonna take the easy way out, but the sensible way out as well, and go with a 2TB Seagate Barracuda for $55. Okay, we have less than $200 to spend. Let's do a power supply first. Like we said in the last video, this can get tricky because the mysterious power supply shortage is still in effect and prices have been inflated. It's kind of hard to even find a good power supply. A lot of them are just out of stock and stuff. So let's just see what we got here. We're looking for a minimum of 750 watts because that's the recommended PSU for the RTX 3080. It'd be cool to get an 80 plus gold unit in here if possible. But look at these prices, it spikes up really quickly. The Silverstone Essential is what we used in the last build. Oh, this one's 80 plus gold. We used this one last time. We used the bronze. So there's a gold one right here for $95. This could be a winner, folks. So this is actually the cheapest 80 plus gold rated PSU at 750 watts on this list. Everything else below it is bronze. And then we've got the Thermaltake Tough Power Gold, which I think this one has weird cables. Does this one have weird cables? Oh, yep. These are the one with the red connectors on the end. Well, that's the power supply side. Do we have a shot of the... Yep. Also on the other end, there's the red connectors that I can't stand. So, nope, sorry, Thermaltake, go away. We're doing Silverstone Essential. Same unit as last time, but now with 80 plus gold efficiency. Yes. That leaves us with $87, roughly $87 for a case. I don't want to go too cheap on a chassis that we're sticking an RTX 3080 into. I'm going to go at least $80 here. There's the Meshify C, pretty solid case. Phanteks Eclipse P300A Mesh for 87 bucks. Either one of these cases, really. They're both good. Although the P300A Mesh is $10 cheaper. I mean, if we wanted to get it like absolutely under $1,700. Ooh, okay. 50 cents over. We're 50 cents over, but I think that's close enough. This could be it. This could be the whole parts list, right? However, let me entertain you with an idea. Instead of going P300A Mesh, what if we keep Phanteks, but we use a slightly higher end case of theirs, like the P500A. It has a lot more bells and whistles. This is a premium case for not too much money. I don't know why the price isn't showing up. P500A, oh, they're all out of stock. See, it's a hot ticket item. So look at this, $99. For $100, you're getting basically the same interior as an Evolve X or a P600S. It's using the exact same internal housing. It's just the outside that's different. In fact, I think the outside's better functionally speaking. Say what you will about aesthetics, but this is a full mesh front panel using a really fine mesh. The actual ventilation holes are separated just a millimeter or so apart. So it acts as a dust filter as well, but more or less provides unrestricted airflow to the inside of your case. I really enjoyed building inside this case a month or two ago. I think it was shortly after we moved into the studio. Yeah, the video where like my utilities were shut off and stuff. That was the case that I built in for that build. And it's got the same high quality that you're used to from Phanteks. And it has a ton of water cooling support. So if you ever did want to throw in a custom loop down the line, get all fancy with it, it's ready to go for that. So this is the case that I would choose if this were my personal build for an RTX 3080. I would definitely go with something like this. I'm not gonna care about RGB this time around, so I'm gonna save some money by going with the non-RGB version, which only includes one rear fan, but we still have the two 120s that are on our Liquid AIO radiator, which we'll be putting at the front of the case for intake. So we'll do, what is that, $99. We're adding $99 to the parts list, which is gonna take us a little bit over $1,700, but not by a lot. So our total comes out to be $1,713.42. Close enough. If you're spending $1,700 on something, you probably don't mind paying an extra $13 if you have to. So I think this is looking good. Let's do a quick recap of the full build. We've got an AMD Ryzen 7 3700X, 8-core, 16-thread processor. That'll be cooled by a Corsair iQOO H100i RGB Pro XT 240mm Liquid AIO. That's also going to open up the doors to overclocking on top of an Asus ROG Strix B550F gaming ATX motherboard on the AM4 platform with 16 gigs dual channel kit of G.Skill Ripjaws 5 DDR5, DDR4, 3600 CAS latency 18 memory. We have a dual drive solution allowing us to boot off of a 500 gig PCIe Gen 4 NVMe M.2 drive and a 2 terabyte mechanical drive for mass storage. Our star of the show is the NVIDIA GeForce RTX 3080 based on the Ampere architecture. That'll be powered by a Silverstone Essentials 750 watt 80 plus gold unit, and all these parts will live inside of the Phanteks Eclipse P500A mid-tower case. And just to reiterate, because I know there's going to be comments about this, even though I prefaced the video by saying what I did earlier, yes, you can build a PC for cheaper than this and still squeeze an RTX 3080 into it. You could do it for $1,500. You could do it for $1,200, as we mentioned. Again, the main objective here was to part out a well-balanced PC that scales with the RTX 3080 and leaves no part of the system on the back burner. And I think we did a pretty good job of that today, but you guys let me know what you think. You probably also don't need to tell me which PC parts list to do next, because let's face it, we're doing the RTX 3090 Big Papa. It's coming in hot, so stay tuned for that. It's going to be super exciting. I'm still trying to figure out what price I'm going to target for that one. It's probably going to be high though. Before you guys head out, feel free to toss a like on the video if you enjoyed it, get subscribed for more tech content on the way, and I will see you guys in the next video.